Hello everyone, welcome back to the MTG Goldfish Podcast, episode 119, your weekly podcast covering everything Magic the Gathering related. You can find us on Google Play, iTunes, mtggoldfish.com, and now on YouTube. So hello to YouTube. Joining, as always, we don't have Richard this week, so we really miss him. We will have him back next week, so enjoy your vacation there, Richard. We'll miss you. But Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, is joining us. What is up, Seth?
What's going on, Chaz? Ready? I'm excited. We got new standard. I have to say, this was maybe the craziest week since I started covering Magic. Such a weird week all around.
Yeah, so just Seth and I this week. Chaz, as always, just general MTG content, focusing on the financial aspect, and Seth's an all-around jank brewer and all-around content creators. So, yeah, Seth pretty much set the mood for us here. We had another crazy change in Standard, an addendum to the BNR announcement that we talked about last week. We posted the podcast, and then a couple days, I think it was like 24 hours later, there was a change. Turns out Felidar Guardian is now banned in Standard. So all the talk that we mentioned last week is now off the table. And it was actually great because Seth and I recorded the top 10 for Standard in Amonkhet, and it was just kind of great timing this time. We didn't get destroyed with the BNR announcements like last time. So we will talk about the BNR that will naturally segue us into the first large tournament featuring Amonkhet, SCG Atlanta. We will talk about the EDH ban list update. We didn't get to talk about that last week. That was updated right after we uploaded the podcast, like legitimately like an hour after. So we didn't get a chance to talk about it. And then we have a boatload of fish mail. So yeah, let's get right to it, Seth. They banned Felidar Guardian. Not a lot of time to react to that. It was basically cutting off at least a few days of testing, or some real testing time for everyone that was going to SCG Atlanta and hoping to, have some more, I guess, data and testing under their belt to bring new decks to Standard. But turns out I think it was really the best decision. I know people are already talking about the top 8 finish, and there was a lot of martyred vehicles still. What do you think about all that? Because I think people are getting ahead of themselves here.
Oh, all right. Well, first off, as far as the bannings, I think me and you were both in agreement when we podcasted last week that we wish they had banned Felidar Guardian, thought they maybe made a mistake by not banning Felidar Guardian on Monday. So the end result of them banning Felidar Guardian, I think, is a good thing. And I think it's really good for Standard. The process of getting there was about as bad as it gets. Like, I don't know if they could really come up with a worse way to ban Felidar Guardian than to say it's not banned on Monday, and then Wednesday night at like 8 o'clock at night, all of a sudden say, oh, by the way, just kidding, it actually is banned. So the process was really bad and discouraging, but hopefully the fact that they made the right decision in the end will outweigh the negative aspects of it. I just feel really bad because, there's some percentage of people that were waiting for the BNR announcement to get their standard deck for Amonkhet, saw the no bannings, and were like, okay, like, maybe Felidar Guardian will end up being banned at the next announcement in 6 weeks, but I'm gonna, buy this deck. It's the best deck in the format. And then to have that happen 2 days later, it's just so bad. So, I don't know. Good decision in the end. Horrible process for getting there. As far as Standard, I think Standard's gonna be good. I think it's gonna be awesome. And we mentioned Wednesday night this all came down. I don't know why anyone would have expected anything other than Mardu vehicles to show up at SCG Atlanta as the best deck. Like, if you think about it, competitive players that have been playing, were grinding last season. If there's 2 decks that you're going to own, it would be Copycat and Mardu vehicles. So if your one deck gets banned on 2 nights before the tournament, it makes a lot of sense just to play the other deck that is good, that has a track record. It's literally, with the banning, the only other tier deck in Standard from the last Standard. So I think it makes a lot of sense that people picked it up. And in reality, yes, it got a lot of copies in the top 8, but it was only 18 of the top 64, which is a lot. It's in the high 20% range. But honestly, that's less than it was previously when Felidar Guardian was in the format, and the rest of the format wasn't 35-40% Felidar Guardian and a couple fringe decks. It was like pretty diverse, and there was a ton of other archetypes in the other 70% of the top 64.
Yeah, so I guess we'll kind of I'll touch on a couple different things because I agree with a lot of what you said. The first things first, like I get it. There's always going to be a percentage of players that are going to be affected negatively from an announcement like this. And I get it. It sucks. It's a feel bad. I understand the frustration. I agree. They kind of botched this whole thing. I mean, I think the whole reason we have all these BNR announcements is to announce on the BNR announcement, right? Like that would be logical. I think that's what people are expecting. But for me, it was the whole data thing. Like, how could you have not enough data 2 days prior and then realize like this has to go? But you know what? They came to the right decision. The card needed to go. I do think it's the best thing for the format. It was just going to stifle the entire format, and it was just going to be awful all around. I mean, not just for us for content's sake, but just in general. I mean, it was not going to be good. And through testing up until, coming weekend, it was just pretty obvious that you're handing a lot of new and great tools to the best deck. I mean, that's pretty much what it came down to. It was a hard fact to realize, but I mean, Saheeli didn't get any worse. It only actually got better. So it just needed to go. And in terms of vehicles at SCG Atlanta, I don't think it really made a clear-cut case that it's still the best deck. Like, it's strong. Obviously, it was a strong choice going into the weekend because it's a known quantity. I mean, really, there was literally no innovation to be had. You already kind of had, an idea in mind of what this deck needs to look like. I mean, they pretty much adopted, 1 or 2 cards from Amonkhet. So It really just wasn't hard to sleeve up a known quantity in Mardu vehicles and just take it to the tournament while other people are kind of figuring out new synergies and figuring out the best answers to this deck. And I think people are going to get there. I saw some lists that I thought were really good, even though they didn't make the top 8. One did. I thought the Mono Black Aggro list by Caleb, was piloted by Caleb, was actually really sweet. But, it's going to take some time. So, again, I just didn't think it made the case that it's all doom and gloom. Mardu Vehicles is going to take over. It's going to be a strong deck. But I don't think any of the other decks are that much worse. Like, I don't think the gap is, as huge as it was before when it was kind of just like copycat and then the rest of the field by a fairly large margin.
Yeah, I'm actually still very hopeful. I think people are, a few things are going on. This is normally week 1s are not necessarily that predictive of what Standard ends up looking like over the long term. Like we've kind of researched that in the past, and sometimes the best deck from the first weekend's event ends up being a tier deck or even the best deck, but more often than not, the big deck from week 1 doesn't end up being this dominant force in Standard. So you already don't want to read too much into a week 1 performance. There hasn't been a pro tour, etc., etc. In this week 1 is even more of an exception to the rule because of just the compressed time frame. Like normally there's not even any debate over whether something's getting banned. As soon as the spoilers come out, you know what Standard's going to look like. Everyone was already getting off to a late start because of this BNR announcement on Monday, and then it became a doubly late start because of the emergency banning on Wednesday. So I don't really read much into this result at all, other than I think it looks really diverse. I'm not at all surprised that tons of Mardu vehicles were there, but I don't think that means anything. I'm more happy to see zombies doing well. We see various green-black decks, we see humans decks, some Etherworks decks, control decks that maybe weren't all the way there yet, but were good enough that I think you'll find a good Torrential Gearhulk deck that's going to be very strong, a merge deck. So I was more I guess, happy with the results and took it as an encouraging sign, considering just the weirdness that led up to this event.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think these decks will continue to, evolve and kind of settle on better, tighter lists that, play better answers or play the better combination of cards. And I totally agree with you. I was really excited to kind of see past the Mardu vehicles finish and see all these decks coming back. I mean, we haven't seen Emerge in quite some time. We were seeing it here and there, but it looked like Emerge was pretty strong again. We see the Alchemist list. We see the green-black list start popping up again. That's normally fine. I mean, I think people are a little tired of the green-black list, but that's just kind of the standard, good stuff list that it's like Jund almost. So I think that's a good sign that the deck can now emerge again and be good. And then you get your whole various aggressive lists like the humans list that can get better. I mean, I think there's more variety than just vehicles kind of being that streamlined aggressive list. So again, I'm with you. I'm really excited to see where this goes. And again, I just don't feel like Mardu, came into that tournament and made the case that it's still the best deck, bar none. I mean, there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, and one other thing to consider is if you think about how Magic decks develop and how they become tier decks, it takes a while. So it's kind of silly to think that someone building mono black aggro or Jund or a zombie deck is going to sit down and on the first take build 100% optimal deck. Maybe you're hitting 50%, 60%. You're not there on the first week, and that's not a knock to the people building the decks. That's just not how deck development works. On the other hand, Mardu Vehicles is already 100%. Like you mentioned, it's playing very few new cards, a couple cut to ribbons, and that's basically the innovation. And this deck has been around a long time, and it's already very optimized. So not only does it have some advantages thanks to the schedule, but it's just more optimal than the other decks. So I think once we see these aggro decks, these green-black decks, these other new decks, zombie decks, get closer to optimal, they're going to put up a lot better of a fight against vehicles, which is already optimal.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about this before. You've written articles about it. I mean, the data is actually there that normally these week ones are not indicative of much. But it's still good to see that, I think it's refreshing that Copycat is gone and all these new decks can kind of still flourish. Let's just say even if Mardu Vehicles continues to be a strong deck, I don't think it's going to be a huge gap, even if it is. It can stick around. I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing if the deck sticks around, as long as there's other viable options, 3 or 4 viable options. I don't think people are going to say standard is bad or anything when, if vehicle sticks around. I think just Copycat was just too much. It wasn't going to get any worse, and it just had to go. I absolutely agree with your deck building, statement there, because we've seen it. I mean, in other formats. I mean, you've seen BNR announcements where they would unban certain cards for dredge, and then new cards would come into the pool, and it would take months and months later to develop an amazing dredge list that we've come to know and had to get rebanned. But you know how that goes. So yeah. And just one more thing about the timing on all of this. I mean, I just think it was a little awkward. And if we're going to have all these announcements, I mean, maybe just scrap the announcements if there's an emergency ban. Cause I mean, I just don't understand how you do this, how you do it that way. I mean, I'm glad that they came to the right conclusion, but it just does not look good at the end of the day.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, the thing that there were a lot of things that bothered me, but maybe the thing that bothered me most is the initial announcement that basically said, we need more data. We want to see what happens with the Pro Tour. We want to see what Amonkhet Standard looks like. And if that is part of the criteria for banning something, why is there even a ban list during spoilers before a set releases? If this is how Wizards looks at things. So I don't know. I wrote an article about this, and one of the things that I came to the conclusion of is I think we need to go back to 4 announcements a year instead of 8. I think this is going to get really old, and I think because the Magic economy and community has grown so big, and there's so many content producers and podcasters like us and YouTubers and all this stuff. Even if there's not going to be changes, it's an easy talking point. So even if there's not going to be changes, we're going to do a podcast and talk about what could change or what might change. And having that happen a few times a year is one thing, but having it happen every 6 weeks creates this major level of uncertainty that I think is really detrimental for the average player. So even if nothing ends up getting banned, there's always this cloud of like, oh, I listened to this podcast and they were talking about bannings and this might change, and it just creates this confusion and uncertainty. So even when Wizards know changes, it's a bad thing, and I think it's just happening too often under this new 8-time-a-year schedule.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it was bad enough 4 times a year where the Jace the Mind Sculptor, is it going to get unbanned in Modern? Like, I mean, literally every single announcement that has happened in the last few years, that constantly comes up every single time. And I just quite frankly can't take it 8 times a year. It's just completely nuts. And I mean, I think that just goes into the whole, banning culture that's probably a whole nother like 45 minutes. But, yeah, I totally agree. I think they need to kind of scale it back, and you're right. If they're going to use that as criteria, because I can actually agree with that. I mean, I don't think pulling the trigger too early, I do think waiting and seeing if something can shake up the format is probably the right solution. But, I mean, then if you're not even going to do that and turn around 2 days later, do it. I mean, I don't know. And then, but to touch on a couple of, things that were kind of said that day and this last kind of week is get it right the first time and don't get it wrong at all. I mean, come on. How can you, that is just not a viable argument. I mean, mistakes are going to be made. The game has been out for so long that it's just bound to happen. Yes, like maybe it's like kind of just happened a lot over the last year or the last few months rather, but I mean, maybe that's just how the variance happened. I mean, that is just not a constructive argument to come out of this with, especially after they admitted their mistake and they're trying to correct it. I don't think slamming them further on that, point and just beating it, beating a dead horse is really the way to go. So I just, it's fine. I get it. The biggest actually problem for me was they announced it at like 8:00 at night. And I was like going home and I was like, wait, what? So I don't know, but the general consensus, even, I drafted most of the weekend, for the release, weekend. The general consensus, amongst players was that, it was the right decision because I think people are just kind of tired of it.
Yeah. Just to say, I agree that beating a dead horse doesn't do anything, but I haven't completely forgiven Wizards for Felidar Guardian. The thing, I can understand the mistakes will happen with cards like Smuggler's Copter. It's a new card type. You want to make sure it sees play. You go a little too far. But Felidar Guardian is just such an obvious combo piece that it's hard for me to just be like, oh, okay, you made a mistake. Like, that's the kind of card that you gotta be double checking. Like, that's just not a kind of card that you can make a mistake with, like you can make with Emrakul being a little too good, or Copter being a little too good. So, I have a hard time with that one still, but you are correct that just saying that over and over again isn't gonna change anything at this point or be productive.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, just for me, and, okay, I am a little biased, I understand, but I mean, just so I can explain, I mean, just where I'm coming from, I mean, I've lived through it, I mean, I've lived through Skull Clamp, I've lived through Jace the Mind Sculptor, I've lived through Stoneforge Mystic, so, obviously mistakes happen, so I've kind of gotten used to it. If folks kind of didn't live through those era, I can understand. This is kind of like their first window, looking through the window into sometimes these cards are a little too good. Like Emrakul that you were saying from day one. Smuggler's Copters, obviously, like you said, it was kind of a new card. They didn't really know how to gauge it. And now Felidar Guardian, yeah, I guess was a little easier to kind of change or alter or even completely scrap beforehand when they realize like, oh, this is like an easy 2-card combo. We can't really have this. So I get it.
Another thing though, that is hopeful is if you look back at those instances you mentioned, Skullclamp in Affinity Mirrodin era, then you had, Jace, out of those mistakes, it feels like Wizards redoubles their effort. And often that leads into really great standards. Like after Mirrodin, Ravnica Kamigawa. Like a lot of people, including you, cite that as a great standard. After
so good.
The Jace fiasco, we had Innistrad, which was a great standard. A lot of people look back on Innistrad standard very favorably. So in that sense, like Wizards messes up every 5 or 6 years. I don't know if they get lackadaisical, forget some of this stuff after a while, but usually good things come out of it in the long run afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think Amonkhet, this block, is going to usher in a pretty good standard. I mean, I really love this set. I know you have kind of drafted it over the release. I drafted it all weekend. I mean, I love this set. I think it's really fun. And I mean, like I said, I think we both agreed that we've seen actually some really good things happening in standard. Yes, Mardu Vehicles, to reiterate, is still good, but I mean, I'm seeing a lot of great stuff and a lot of great cards from Amonkhet that are enabling new archetypes. Like you said, the zombies, there's just straight up like black aggro list, and those interactions with Dread Wanderer and Bone Picker and, Collective Brutality and Never to Return. So all these cards are starting to, surface, and I think it's really great.
Oh, that mono black deck. I remember watching my camera just like, it's so janky. Like,
it does look
Night
like
Market,
that,
look out. Turn 2. Cast my Walking Ballista for 0 so it dies. Bone Picker you. Like, but it worked. I mean, it got top 8. It just, on paper, it looks so ridiculous.
It does. But, I do think that's something that can, change and get better. All right. So that kind of wraps up, the ban announcement and SCG Atlanta. Seth, we didn't get to talk about the EDH banning. We did talk about this beforehand, before we started recording. So just for everyone that knows this, it was released right after we released the podcast last week. But Leovold is now banned, and Protean Hulk is unbanned, which caused quite a bit of a spike on Protean Hulk. If anyone was trying to rush out to get them, probably was not happy to see them at like $15-20. That same day and probably going forward. What do you think of this? I know let's just kind of get back into that discussion we were having of, I don't think everyone always agrees. This kind of seemed a little arbitrary with the Protean Hulk thing, but I can fully understand Leovold finally kind of making it on that announcement. I was expecting this to be a lot sooner. But I guess I was right. Within the year, pretty much is gone. So, did not last long. It's too good.
I'm definitely on board with Leovold being banned as well. It's one of those cards. It's not only very good, but it's also just really unfun. Leovold into a wheel effect is just, it's not a fun way to play Commander. And Commander, more so than a lot of formats, is about having fun, and it's about like the social interaction, and it just, like, the Leovold decks work against what I see Commander as being about. So I am not sad at all to see it banned. As far as Hulk, I have no clue what they're thinking. Like, what is the upside of having Hulk in the format? Like, why do you really just want another really easy turn 2 infinite combo that anyone can play? So I don't know what their thought process is. I guess it's probably fine, but it's just so, I don't know if I see the upside of unbanning Hulk in Commander.
Yeah, I think if we kind of were extremely invested in EDH, it would make more sense or less sense. But it kind of seems divided, so it seems to me that there is like a little bit of confusion, or, folks that just really wanted it back or don't want it back. But to me, when I kind of see stuff like this, and we talked about this, so like what eventually, like how does these happen? Like how does Protean Hulk come off the ban list, but yet like a card like Soul Ring has gone on for so long? Like what's the ultimately the huge criteria here? Because I don't know, maybe obviously there'll be comments if I'm getting this wrong, but I haven't seen, at least recently, like, why was, like, suddenly Protean Hulk? Was that something that has been on the radar for a long time? That's not something that I saw, but, then you made the comment, so I'll let you make the comment again, about their, kind of in their own little bubble, their play group, and how that determines, something like this for everyone. I don't know if that's always the best, outcome, because, like we just talked about, I mean, how does this, get back into the pool, but Soul Ring's okay?
Yeah, the way Commander bannings work is really odd compared to the rest of Magic. Basically, Sheldon Menery is the one that does the bannings and kind of runs entire thing, but from what I've heard and what my impression is that they pretty much play Commander, and based on their games of Commander, that's how cards get banned or unbanned. And sometimes it feels like there's not a lot of rhyme and reason to it. I think that they do a good job, generally speaking, and it's nothing against them, but some of the cards that are unbanned just seem so good compared to random stuff that ends up getting banned. When you ban random 6, 7, 10 drop creatures, but you can have openings where you go Soul Ring into Mana Vault into play a whatever 7 drop on turn 2, like those cards are way more broken to me than random 7 drops that ramp you and stuff. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see with it picking up on Moto. This was the other thing we were talking about. If that changes how bannings work in Commander, or how the ban list actually is shaped, because Wizards is going to be picking up the ban list essentially for the 2-player dual Commander, thanks to it being on Magic Online. So we'll see if that spills over at all, or maybe they just pick up multiplayer Commander as well and start having an official Wizards run ban list for that. So it'll be interesting. This will be an exciting summer for Commander players for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. We started talking about that, and I think it was a great point that we came up with, that with them adopting this kind of 1v1 Commander and having this be an official thing on Moto, I do think it will pressure the normal kind of EDH, casual, whatever you want to call it, this to kind of adopt some of that, because I think when people are getting exposure to this format, or they're going on a Moto and they're kind of jumping into EDH for the first time, or seeing, people stream this now, or, the results, and they're seeing like, oh, no Soul Ring, because in 1v1 it's even more crazy in that format. And I've, played 1v1 in Dual Commander for quite some time. When you see some of these cards like Soul Ring on there, and them working really closely with the Dual Commander crew and adopting this and getting used to that, going back to the other Commander, format, and, now suddenly having Soul Ring again, I think it's going to put more pressure on Sheldon and kind of their little group there, to kind of peer pressure there that people are getting exposure to this, and people saying like, this kind of needs to happen because it's clearly working here. People are getting exposed to it here, so we just need to kind of have a little bit of continuity there.
Yeah, and I think it'll look weird if you go to play a competitive Commander format and Soul Ring is banned, for example, and then you go to play a casual format where it's not supposed to be as spiky, and those cards are illegal, so maybe it'll kind of force people's hand, just the perception of it.
Yeah, I'm really excited all around about them adopting that and seeing where that goes, because I do think it can make some good positive changes for the EDH community at large, even outside of the Dual Commander, because of those instances, and because people getting exposed to that and seeing like, well, if it's banned here, how can it possibly, where it's like more of a, like you just said, a casual setting. I mean, people playing Soul Ring and a Mana Vault and all this stuff seems a lot more powerful than some random 8-drop, even though I think, like, yeah, Sylvan Primordial is a good card, but is it really more powerful than Soul Ring and Mana Vault and all that stuff that's still around? Yeah, no knock to Sheldon and all them. I do think generally they get it right, and they've, kind of steered EDH in the right direction all this time, but I can kind of see now being more exposed to EDH and playing it more, that there's kind of that pushback where it's like, what are you guys doing sometimes?
Yeah, and it's weird because Wizards has the final authority, so even when they make bannings that people don't like, I think people are just kind of like, whatever, but since this is not Wizards, I think people are more willing to like push back against the Commander ban list, because it doesn't have the same sort of authority that Wizards has when they ban a card in Modern or in Standard or whatever.
Absolutely. So, unfortunate as it is, Leovold is gone. Yeah, I didn't expect that to last too long, but oh well. I can fully understand it, so I'm not here like making a huge stink about it. It just had to go. It really did promote a lot of not good fun games. So. And it was like the best colors too, so it was just all around crazy.
Yeah.
Seth, we have a lot of fish mail. I haven't read Fishmail in a long time, so this is gonna be fun.
We have a ton of Fishmail,
so much.
Yeah.
So let's get to that. All right. Let's see if I can do this. All right. By Mean Pork. When is the MTG Goldfish D&D podcast with Budget Commander as DM happening? Oh, that would be actually really fun.
I know Tomer has mentioned doing some sort of D&D content, so we'll see. I don't know if it'll happen or what it would be, but I know that's on his radar because he loves D&D.
Awesome. That would be great. I think that would be pretty fun for us to do an adventure. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be happening fairly soon. Who knows? At J is for Junior. What's the best cycling deck for Standard you've seen so far? Esper, Teamer look like viable options. They look like viable options. Okay, that wasn't a question. So yeah.
I haven't seen too many dedicated cycling decks yet. I guess we were talking about the Emerge decks playing Drakehaven out of the sideboard, more for the discard part of it than the cycling part. But I think there could be a new perspectives deck, just as far as like a cycling controlling deck. I think I would lean towards Esper probably being the best one. And a lot of the control decks we saw are playing Censors, Cast Outs, the cycling land. So if those count as cycling decks, maybe a blue-white or Esper colors.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards like traditional blue-red or even Grixis or Jeskai. I kind of feel that blue-red needs to be a part of that. I just think there's a lot of good stuff in those colors to build around Drakehaven. But yeah, we'll see. I do see the merits in Esper, but I don't know so much about Teamer, but it could certainly happen. There's a lot of possibilities there. So at Archie Galway 1, Saffron Olive, ever thought of taking a trip to a small Japanese tournament? For some reason, I think you would make a lot of friends there.
Maybe someday I'll go to Japan and check out the tournament scene. I do love the decks. There's always tons of interesting decks coming out of Japan.
There are. Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, at Psalm 0ND, would Oath of Nissa been a better ban? Keep the combo alive but mess with its mana. I think Felidar Guardian just had to be the one to go.
Yeah, that's I don't even know the example of that. That's like banning Remand or something to take care of Splinter Twin. Like, I just, you can't do that. That wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
Because, and the other thing that people miss is there's, like, Liliana was a combo with Felidar Guardian. People ask why Saheeli Rai, why not Saheeli Rai? And it's because Felidar Guardian is going to be in Standard for, like, 2 more years, and there's going to be more cards that'll combo with it, most likely. So, just cut the heart out, get rid of the problem once and for all, be done with it.
Yep. Okay. At AJ Hewitt, what is your favorite sandwich? What side? Oh, man.
Well, it's got to be a hot dog for you, right, Chaz?
Oh, don't get me started with this newfangled sandwich definition. Okay, so actually, my favorite sandwich, I don't know, maybe other people actually know about this that are listening. There was a deli called Cameron's Deli. It was right near my high school. And the main kind of everyone in the whole, like, county knew about this sandwich, the Cluckin' Russian. And it was a chicken cutlet with, Munster cheese, bacon, and Russian dressing on a roll. And that was like the staple. Everyone knew about it. Everyone loved it. And it was great. No side. I mean, it was just like straight up. You don't need a side with this sandwich. It was so good.
That actually does sound pretty good.
It's pretty good, right? Yeah.
I'm just gonna go with the turkey and Swiss, I think. I don't have a great story like Chaz, but I like me some turkey.
It's, basic but good.
Yeah.
Speaking of basics, so at Billiam was taken, basics for 9-year-old sons, free win red beta, Arabian Nights, APOC, or mismatched. Looking for max tilt equity. Oh, man. Mismatched has to be the most max tilt.
Yeah, mismatch white border, I think, is the max tilt equity, yeah.
That is awful right there. Okay. At D Jarek MTG. Could suspending cards be an alternative to bans in Standard? Avoids losing cash and could be changed to keep format fresh. I think we answer this a lot. I don't think any kind of suspending or kind of reducing the number or like restricting or anything like that. I think it's just too convoluted. I think it's either it's legal or it's banned, especially in Standard.
Yeah, I think the complexity is just too much to do stuff like that. And I think you still have financial ramifications. Like, if your card's suspended, it's still going to go down in value. So I don't know if it even solves the problem it's hoping to solve.
So at Des Comdarja, just returned to MTG recently. My first deck was destroyed by Copter's banning. Ugh. Decided to try Legacy Miracles. Jinx?
Yeah, that's brutal.
That's awful.
That is, yeah. Yeah?
That has to
be.
Yeah, I am sorry. That really sucks.
That's especially
my only condolence is it doesn't really happen that much. Like, that's probably not going to happen all too often. You are just in the very small percentage that would happen to. So I guess you're special. I don't know.
And I mean, the upside is a lot
that
of
sucks. I'm sorry.
A lot of your miracle cards are still fine. Like your dual lands, your fetch lands. So like, yeah, it sucks that top isn't there and Entreat with Angels is worth $1 instead of $2 or whatever it was. But the biggest part of your investment's not really going to lose because of it.
So at Hash Brown Monster, with Top gone and Legacy, does Scroll Rack jump in value? Is Legacy closer to dying?
Well, I don't think Legacy's closer to
I don't know,
dying.
Closer to dying? I mean, I don't know how much more it could take before it's like... I mean, I'm pretty sure it's been flatlined for a while. I mean, I understand before all the comments, people do play Legacy. It is fun. I get it. But in terms of like being a mainstream, covered and, having these super large events all the time and kind of not too long ago having, SCG Legacy opens and watching them on stream, it's just been so far from that for so long. I don't know what to tell you.
As far as Scroll Rack, there's just no substitute for top. I've heard different things suggested, and there's just not another card in Magic that does what top does. Nope. So I think that there's no sense in trying to find a substitute. It's just not there.
Yeah, and that's probably a good thing, to be honest. Okay, so at Tom Simons, can we please get Leovold added to the Legacy Movers and Shakers? None of the T-chest cards are on there.
Oh, well, once Richard gets back from vacation,
all right.
I will suggest that to him.
Okay, yeah, we'll get that squared away. At Adopt MTG Tokens, how do you guys feel about the Commander Rules Committee? Do you think it's time for Wizards to take over? Well, we just kind of talked about that. I don't know if Wizards will take over the kind of the general EDH ban list, but I do think we talked about them kind of indirectly influencing the Commander Rules Committee by kind of adopting this dual commander and having people exposed to this on MTGO in these leagues.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, and we'll see. I mean, I think they generally do a good job. Could Wizards take it over with the Moto stuff? Maybe, but we just got to wait and see.
At Josh_Jar Manning. Who draws these silly cartoons that you use for the video thumbnails, and when did you start doing this?
This started maybe a month ago.
Yeah, about a month ago.
We have a thumbnail guy now. I think his name is Andre, something like that, but he's not like a known artist, so I'm gonna have to look and see if I can find his social media or something, because a lot of people have asked and like the art, so I will have to look into it.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's great to see these thumbnails. It's really awesome. I think that has a really unique style to them, so I think that's why everyone's really been asking. At Gamelio, can you elaborate, and if they aren't, why they make Bicycle Lands, reprint Avon, and make the Red Hate Bear a 2/2?
Oh, I think the one below it goes with it. It's like 2 pieces.
Oh, you all previously said the writing is on the wall in RE reprinting enemy colored fetch lands. Okay, so this is a 2-part question, and then about the Bicycle Lands, reprint Avon, and the Red Hate Bear. I'm kind of against the colored fetch lands coming back, but I guess some of these printing, like these a couple of these cards could foreshadow that. I'm just not sure it's a lock.
Yeah, I think it's possible they come back to Standard. I think it's even likely over the long term, but are they going to come back in this Standard? I don't know. Probably the odds are against it for any individual Standard, but sooner or later, I think Wizards will just want the sweet, sweet fetch land money in a big Standard set.
Maybe. I mean, they've been doing fairly well without them to be, to kind of look back. And I don't know. I think Marrow is kind of on record saying that they don't really want fetch lands. But, you never know. If things start to slip, what's the better way to get things back on track than fetch lands? So I could definitely see it happening, even though I would not like it very much. Sepic121. What do you think played a bigger part in the Felidar ban? The Magic Internet Forums rage or 2 days data from NTGO? Pretty sure it had to be the community. I don't think it's data, that's for sure, because the data was already there.
Yeah, I think it was definitely the response from the community that was the biggest thing, yeah.
At Reigning Dark Rider. In what format do you see playing head games? Both the card and the wonderful troll factor.
Looking up head games.
Head games, I think it's from Onslaught.
Yep.
Okay, Seth.
What is it,
from
Chaz?
Onslaught. It's black.
Yep.
It's 3 generic and 2 black.
Yep.
It's something about, like, you reveal the top 7 cards and, like, you get to exile any amount of them or something? Like, non-land?
You're sort of close. Your opponent puts all the cards from their hand on top of their library. Then you search their library for that many cards and put it into their hand. And then they shuffle.
Oh, sweet. So it's like you give them a new hand. All right, yeah. I don't know. I always thought it was a pretty cool card. I just don't think it cuts it. Or it's going to cut it for constructed. But, yeah, and then the troll factor, like in head games, actual, like, mind games in terms of competitive play. I mean, that's always really a thing, no matter what format.
Yeah, I mean, you probably find some combo for it, like Psychogenic Probe, deals damage when your opponent shuffles their library, turn it into like a 5-mana shock. that'll teach them.
I thought you were going to give me some great combo. You give me a shock for rearranging their entire hand. I think if anyone could do it, you could do it. So.
Well, maybe against the odds. I'll add head games to a future against the odds poll. So
yes. At David versus X. For the new Commander set, what would a legendary Jund werewolf look like? Hopefully nothing like the one that they gave us in Eldritch Moon. It needs to like create wolves and like be like a pack master kind of thing, right? Like I know Hunt Master, but it's kind of a thing. But I think literally if they made a legendary version of that in some form, like that would have been fine.
Yeah, I think that's what you want, is like a combination of Huntmaster and Arlen Cord, but on a legendary creature. So it flips, it makes things, maybe it pumps your wolves when it's flipped. Like, combine those things together, and then you have a pretty sweet legendary werewolf.
At J.K. Donati, could Seth do a behind-the-scene video where he shows in details his video editing workflow? Oh, that would be interesting, Seth.
I will add it to the to-do list. It might be a while, but I will add it to the list. It's
a very long list at this point. At Viper Johnny B, I want to buy a candelabra. What's the legality of the reserve list and chances of it going away? I don't want to get burned. I don't think you really have to worry about the reserve list. And this is coming from someone who doesn't actually like the reserve list at all and would like to see it gone. I don't think you're going to have to worry about that.
Yeah, Wizards just restated with Iconic Masters that they aren't planning on getting rid of the reserve list. Could it happen eventually? Yeah, I think that's something that could happen if we get to the point where Magic is failing and Wizards does something desperate, but that doesn't seem likely, and I don't know. It seems like it's here to stay. And Candelabra is kind of in that really old low supply category anyway, where even if there were new border copies, I think it's going to still maintain a decent amount of value just because Antiquities is super rare.
Yeah, I think actually, did you write an article about this, Seth, or was this over Twitter, that regardless of how many printings there are of certain cards, like it doesn't mean, I mean, we look even at like Beta Sarah Angel, that didn't, it didn't do anything to that, those original printings, so I don't think it'll do much to a candelabra.
Yeah, those cards are like collector's items. It's like making
Yeah.
prints of the Mona Lisa. The original Mona Lisa isn't worth less because you have a poster print of it on your wall. That doesn't work that way. So I think when you get back to like Alpha, Beta, Antiquities, Legends, like those 4 sets are pretty much collector's items at this point, I think, and would be very unaffected if there was the end of the reserve list.
Yeah, and I know I kind of answered with like I think, but I'm pretty confident that the reserve list is not going away. So just to kind of reiterate that, I'm fairly confident on that. At Gendar Mace 13, Palazzo 47, with a yearly Masters Commander Anthology set and masterpieces in each set, are we experiencing any burnout? Maybe slightly, but I think what Wizards really is genuinely trying to do is have multiple products to choose from for all kind of walks of Magic player. I mean, the game has now grown to a size that there's all these different types of players now. It's not something that was like 10 years ago when you had like a few million people. I mean, we're up to a huge size of players, and a lot of different players want a lot of different things out of the game. And I think providing more products to all these types of players is a positive.
Yeah, I think that you just, as a player, you have to start ignoring products that you don't care about or aren't for you. Like, doing content and stuff, kind of got to cover everything, but there are certain products that, in my personal life, I just don't really care about. I'm not going to buy them. Other than doing the content and stuff on them, they just aren't for me, and that's fine. So I think it's a matter of learning as a Magic player how to pick and choose what you do care about and what you don't care about.
Yep. Agreed. At Gendar Maze 13, I want to start playing Modern, and I've opened some masterpieces. What's the best way to get the max value from them? I do think like TCG/eBay is probably the way to go on this, if not locally. I do think if you're trying to get the max, I would say buy list, but that's probably you're gonna want that to be your last option if you really want to start getting the most, as much as you can of a Modern deck.
Yeah, number one, I think, is see if you can find a local to trade with.
Yeah.
Maybe you can find someone that wants your masterpiece and you get full retail in Modern cards for it. So that would be ideal. Otherwise, I agree with you, Chaz. I think that TCG and eBay is the best way for that. Also, like, Facebook groups, if you look for, like,
Yes.
high-end Facebook groups and stuff, you might be able to find someone that'll pay you above eBay or comparable with less shipping and fees from a group like that.
At Peter Pascua, going to start mass organizing my paper cards. How should I start? Sort by color, first then sets. Any good resources? Yeah, that's a pretty massive undertaking. I know, everyone kind of has their own cataloging kind of philosophies here, so it's really whatever makes sense to you. I would recommend there's some scanning software out there that could help. If you wanted to somehow turn that into a buy list or an exportable CSV file, you can look into the Ion Scanner or Scryglass or any of those. Those certainly do help.
Yeah, I have never used the scanners, but I've heard good things about them, so that's definitely a possibility. As far as actually sorting the cards, I think it's really up to you. Just take it in small chunks. I don't think it especially matters if you sort by rarity, then color, then set. Probably the fastest is like rarity, color, set, I guess, is the direction I would probably go unless you're already sorted by rarity. I think sorting by set without sorting any other way first gets really overwhelming, and you're just going to have so many piles of cards because there's so many sets, so it's easier to break it down into a smaller chunk and then go to sets.
At Paradoxical Data, who is your favorite underrated commander?
I'm gonna go with
There's a lot.
Blind Seer. What's that one do, Chaz?
Which one?
Blind Seer.
Ooh, it's a blue card.
It is.
It's from Invasion.
Oh, very good.
It's a 2/2 for 4, I think. It's like 2 and 2 blue?
3/3, but
3/3?
you're correct with everything else. Yep, 3/3.
Okay.
But what's its ability?
Oh.
It's so bad.
I can't remember. I think it has to do something with like changing the color of something, or
yeah,
I can't remember.
You pay 1 in a blue, and you can change the color of target spell or permanent until end of turn.
All right.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Sweet. I got most of the way there. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good one. A lot of those, like, what's that? Like Rain Academy Chancellor, like all those like weird legends from a long time ago are all pretty underrated.
Yeah.
You can actually search in the Legends set, and you can find a ton of them that are just generic, like 6/5 legends that are like 7 mana for no reason. Say, take your pick. At JK Donati, on MTG Coldfish, why do you track TCG mid instead of the new, more accurate market price? TCG mid can be way off.
I think the biggest... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just saying, I think Richard was trying to make that change, but there was like a reason why that didn't happen.
Yeah, I think that the problem right now is TCG hasn't released the API and the software necessary to support market pricing. I think they will, and that Goldfish will most likely switch to it once it's available, but right now TCG hasn't made that available, so we're kind of waiting on that.
Fair enough, so there you have it. I think that's it for the fish mail, Seth. That was a lot. That was awesome. Great questions. As always, send those in every week. Best way to get them answered is using the hashtag MTGFishmail, but we do try to pull them from every corner now. So if we don't get to them, don't be discouraged. We will get to them at some point. Sometimes it's just a lot. We try to work in as many as we can, but really great questions. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for sending the questions, everyone. So give us more for next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Seth, anything out the door? Oh yeah, I guess this could be a goal fishing. How was your pre-release? Because I caught a little bit of the stream, but then I had to go. Sound like you were enjoying yourself.
It was a lot of fun. The games were really close. Open to Gideon, ended up going 4-1, which is pretty reasonable. Yep. So the first stream was really fun, and people seem to love Amonkhet Limited. I've heard some pros saying that this might literally be the best limited format of all time, which is very high praise, but it seems like generally very positive views about Amonkhet Limited.
Yeah, I've seen that too over the weekend, that if it's one of, if not the best, I don't know if that's like kind of pushing it, but I can certainly see the argument. I mean, it's really fun. Yeah, it kind of just felt like there was a lot of things to be doing in a lot of different colors, and there's not, like, yeah, there's some bombs like Glorybringer and stuff like that it's like kind of unfortunate, but it feels like not any one thing is like totally unbeatable, right? Like I feel like you have your chances, right? Like it's not like completely bomby and swingy and there's like no chance. I never really felt like I didn't have a chance in any one of the games, and a lot of them have been really competitive. I just did not have very many blowouts, sans like, complete like, mana starving or just drawing a terrible hand or having a mulligan, but every game I've played, and I've drafted all weekend, went to 2 pre-releases, planning on drafting again. It's really fun. I mean, it's just really fun.
I think the mechanics are the big reason, because
yeah, I think so too.
Cycling, for example, helps you find your lands when you need it, leads to less non-games. Embalm is surprisingly relevant in Limited, because there were games I played where you would kind of have nothing to do. You're playing off the top of your deck, but you have a couple random embalmed creatures in your graveyard. So in a normal game in another format, you would just be passing your turn, doing nothing, feeling kind of bad about it. But in the worst case, you're casting a random aftermath card, or you're embalming something back. So it felt like you were doing something all the time, more so than a lot of other formats, just because of the mechanics and how they work.
Yeah. If it's one thing I really don't like, just so I'm not like completely like, there's a couple cards I really don't like. It's, oh man, what is that card that puts brick counters on and like you can't attack or block? That card is obnoxious. That card is just really obnoxious. I forget what it's called. It's like a temple or something. You put brick counters on it. But I
Pyramid
hate that
of the
card.
Pantheon. That one.
Yeah, there it is. Oh my.
I had that in my first sealed pool, and I thought it was good.
Yeah. It's really good. I mean, it's just obnoxious. So, like, I hate playing against it. It's so annoying.
No. Are you talking about the one that taps creatures? Or the one that adds mana?
No, they can't attack or block, and
Yeah.
then like once you have 3 brick counters, they can't use their abilities either.
Oh, I got wrecked by that card. I was thinking
Oh,
of the
that
other
card-
brick counter card. Yeah, that card
yeah.
is so obnoxious. Yeah,
It's
I
so
agree.
obnoxious. Oh my goodness, I hate that card. And actually, I didn't see people playing it at first, but now I think people are coming around to that like 6-man. I think it's either 6 or 7.
The
like for the
Hexproof guy?
6/7 with oh my,
Yeah,
that card, so good.
yeah. Just
You literally can't stop that card.
it's the abyss. Your opponent just sacks a creature every turn by chump blocking.
Literally, like there's one sacrifice effect in the whole set, I think.
Yeah, there's not many ways of dealing with it, and it's so big that it's really hard to block.
It's so obnoxious too. And then like coupled that with the Ronas's Monument, oh my it was so awful. I played against that my last draft. I ended up going 3-1, but I lost. We were both the 3-0 players, and I just totally got blown out by that. I was like, well, I guess I can't stop an 8-9 trampler with hexproof. Don't have much for that.
Oh, yeah.
Should have been playing green. I did not play green the one time, and that's what happens, Seth.
That's what it
I
always
get
comes
blown
back
out.
to with you, Chaz. That's the
does.
bottom line. Should have been playing green.
The green giveth, and the green taketh away. Green is really strong, both in I think in standard with Amonkhet and in limited. So really happy. But yeah, Seth, this has been a blast. We will have Richard back next week. Anything out the door? I think we handled everything.
I think we got it.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. We will see you all next time. This is Seth and I signing out. Yeah, we'll do this again.